Hi everyone, I'm Jonas Kjellberg. I'm a serial entrepreneur, investor, author. I had the great pleasure of joining a smaller company that was called Yoltid that later became SKYPE. I invested in a small company called iCloud very early on. No one really believed that this was going to be successful. But we were very lucky. One day, this big fruit company called and actually bought the company. I invested nearly over 400 million euros in Zalando. And Zalando sold shoes on the internet. And when I did that, many were very surprised and said, Jonas, who would ever want to buy shoes on the internet? But luckily, it turned out to be okay. Today, the company is listed on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange and doing really well. I've also started a lot of companies. I've started more than 50 different companies. I founded a company called Player.io and Anuba, and I was the chairman of the board of a company called Keynote. I sold all of these companies to Yahoo. So if you ever have a company that is not working out, call Yahoo, because with a bit of persuasion, they buy everything. My life has always been, how do you change the game? How do you take a perfectly working business model and destroy it? That's my passion. But I'm going to try to talk about the secret sauce that I try to use for entrepreneurs, but also for larger companies to rethink their game and become more of a game changer. And the things I'm going to talk today about is the three main gears, which is customer acquisition, delight, and innovating in business models. The first thing you need to do as an entrepreneur or big business is unlock customer acquisition. You need to understand how do you innovate in bringing in new customers. This is one of the things that people talk very little about because it's one of the most difficult things. And if you found a great solution, you will not share it with anyone. So with the technology coming around the corner, this is going to be one of the most disruptive perspectives of the industry to rethink how do you add customers faster and cheaper. What do big telcos do? They buy enormous big campaigns, radio, TV, the more the better. We didn't have that kind of money, we were all broke. So how do you build a network service like this? Because let's be honest, in the beginning, there's no users on the product, so there's no benefit of having it because you can't call anyone. So we said, okay, what happens if we make a small pop-up button after a good call? And in that pop-up button, it said, would you like to recommend this service? And if you clicked yes, we went in, we opened your Outlook, and then we sent a mail to all of your contacts saying, hi, I'm Jonas Kjellberg. I would like to call you for free. This is my Skype username. Please connect and call with me. And can you imagine when companies like IKEA, HBC started using this product, we sent quite a lot of mails. So in the beginning, we had zero cost of marketing. It actually was so successful, so it actually over time became viral, so we had to stop this email perspective because otherwise it would clog all the email services. What is delight? If I say the word delight, what comes to mind? We have taken this from the hierarchy of customer needs. At the top you have delight, and then at the bottom you have efficiency and functionality. You can talk about product market fit, but in the end, I would say delight is what sets your product apart from everything else. Because in the end, many of the companies that I meet and big CEOs, they're super focused on efficiency and functionality. But for me, how do you innovate in tomorrow's delight? And how do you create something that stands out by using technology or rethinking things? Sarah, for example, they have first with the latest. It's all about thinking, how can we define what we are? How do you put that in one perspective? And then I can give you an anecdote again around Zalando, because H&M grew very hard, then Sarah outgrew them, and then we thought, okay, how do we disrupt them? Let's invest in online sales of shoes and clothes. And Zalando has outgrown H&M. In the last 10 years, they are now half their market size as H&M. And their friction-free storytelling was we dress code. It was all a data analytical play. And in the beginning, when I was in the board, I was quite upset because most of the things on the site at Zalando were super boring and super ugly. So I went to our head of fashion, which was a former BCG colleague, and said, maybe we could spice things up here a bit. And then she just looked at me and said, Jonas, never ever underestimate the bad taste of Germans. Because for her, everything was one big Excel sheet. And it was all about tracking and understanding what are you going to buy and building a specific site for that user. And most of the user actually had bad taste. You also need to innovate in your business model. As you heard, I had the great opportunity to being part of this company. And this is something that, started very early on. It started at my Tele2 time together with Niklas, where we left, I came back, and we took a stride at it. But one of the most important perspective here was basically trying to understand, how do you price it? Because calling from A to B, there's very little delight in that. So we said, okay, let's do an analysis. So we said, let's rethink what's happened with long distance calling. And there was a very clear trend going downwards. So I said, why shouldn't we, if this trend continues, why don't we price it to 0? And everyone just looked at me and said, Jonas, are you stupid? How are we going to make money? And I'm like, I don't know. The only thing I can see that this trend is very clear. It's the cost of running telephony is not going to be. It's going to be a race to the bottom. Let's start to 0. And everyone's like, great. Could we fire this idiot? And I'm like, okay. And then Niklas says, maybe he has a point. So he said, let's start the innovation in 0 game. What would we need to do to be able to keep that promise? Because we could not act as a telco. We had all worked at the telco. So we needed to rethink all the parts and models of a telco player. So we said, let's do some benchmarking. A telco loves to invest in infrastructure. At SKYPE, we said, let's use the internet that you've already purchased from your internet provider. And in that sense, we found our first 0. We did not have cost for broadband. Second part, a telco company loves to put out phones and have them call. And we said, let's use the processing power in your computer to code the calls and transmit it. In that case, we didn't have to buy any Ericsson servers. We used the processing power in your computer to do the calls. We found another 0, so we had no cost for processing. Then a telco operator would rack a lot of servers around the globe to get good voice quality. And we said, okay, how do we solve this? But then with the Kazaa technology, they said, okay, maybe let's use the peer-to-peer technology and use your CPU power in every computer. Then, by now I ran a couple of telcos and I knew that the cost of customer service could stand for 20-30%. My challenge though was that most of my time when I called a customer service like Vodafone, I was happy, but after the call, I was super pissed and sad. And I spoke with all the other colleagues and everyone had the same experience. You're happy, you call customer service and then you're super pissed. And if that's the case, there's a negative delta by having a bad customer service. So we said, let's make it impossible to call SKYPE. Let's take away our phone numbers from our business cards. Let's just make it impossible to call us. So I would say one of the most fundamental things in innovating in business model is actually innovating in zeros. Are you a game changer or are you an outperformer? Let's be honest, most companies in the world are outperformers. You work harder, you have the same business model, you do the same thing as your competitors, you do it a bit better, and you're successful making money. It's 100% fine to be an outperformer. But if you adapt and become a game changer and rethink and innovate in zeros, you can create a company that is beyond things.